This episode was brought to you thanks to the help of Otaku Noir. Otaku Noir is a Black-owned mystery box subscription service that fully curates each box with materials from creators of color. If you want to get your first box now, please go to their website at otakunoir.com and use our code UBGP to get 10% off your first order. All right, y'all, welcome to another episode of Unapologetically Black Gaming Podcast, and we are back for season 3. That's right, 3 seasons. Everything is better in threes. TLC, 3LW, Tone. You know what it is, and you already know who I am. I am the infamous hood rat with the heart of gold himself, Cortez Washington. I'm joined by a special guest. This person is the associate professor of media studies at Georgia Tech. They are also the author of Disturbed Blackness, African American Cybercultures, from the black hand side, Twitter as a cultural conversation, and one of my favorite things I just read recently, When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong, Resident Evil 5, Racial Representation and Gamers. Please show some love to André Brock.
Thank you.
Oh,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I fumbled through that a
It's
little
all
bit.
right. You want to do it again?
No, it's cool.
Okay.
We gonna run with
Let's
it. I always
roll
run
with
with it. So yeah. Oh man, how you doing today?
I'm good. Happy Monday to you if you celebrate. Fuck work.
Yeah.
Fuck work if you don't. Like, let's do it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. All right. So let's start this off the right way. What is your first gaming memory? So like, what is the first game you played when you were like, man, this is this is something that's going to be attached to me for the rest of my life as like a hobby?
I played E.T. on the Atari 2600. We were one of the first kids in my neighborhood to have one. But also Mattel Baseball on the Intellivision. That should tell you how old I am. Like, those are the first games that I remember playing.
Wow. E.T., the infamous E.T.
The infamous
too.
E.T., right.
Oh, was it that bad?
It was trash, and I knew it was trash, but I also had an Atari, and most kids didn't have an Atari, so I was the celebrity in the neighborhood, so it worked out.
Yeah. That's like saying, hey, I got that new Michael Bay film.
Yes.
And you the only kid with a movie theater in the house.
I got these new Iverson shoes from Stephen Barry's, like
oh God, not the Stephen Barry, Starberries.
Right.
Oh.
You know exactly what that's exact Stephen Marbury. Exactly.
Oh God, I haven't heard that name in so long. Oh, came and went. It was such a pivotal moment for the culture.
For sure.
Oh, so I really want to get into like your story about like, you know, just your origin story of becoming like getting into academia, but also like really want to talk about the things you've established with and I wrote this down too, the critical technoculture discourse analysis. Like that's something that I came across that was very interesting and very new to me. But first, I really want to hear how you got in your pathway of academia and really got involved in media studies.
So my villain origin story is that when I got to graduate school, I ran into... So my first graduate school was Carnegie Mellon. And at the time, Carnegie Mellon was famous for writing about digital culture, right? And so I got super excited about it. I was already 30 years old, and I felt like I had some familiarity with the idea from a Black perspective because, like I told you, I've been playing video games forever. I had a Commodore 64 when I was 16, right? I've been having it. But when I got to graduate school, they were like, well, Black folk only use technology from the wrong side of the divide. And I was like, that don't make no sense. Have you ever heard Track Call Quest Sky Pager? Like, do you know the importance of a Sky Pager? Like, they had no clue, right? And so from there, I started writing about the internet, which was the big thing. I've written on spaces like Yahoo, when people still use Yahoo, and blogs and newspapers and stuff. And but I kept gaming. And so the way I've structured my career in hindsight is that I always wanted to keep up with spaces where Black people found themselves digitally, right? Because you couldn't see our bodies, and yet there was something there that we kept doing so that you could recognize us as Black people. And so I used my research money from my first job to buy a PS3 and an Xbox, the original Xbox, right? And then Resident Evil 5 came out. At the time, I've been following with great interest. You know, this is going back Jeff Gerstmann and Game Zero, the guy Kroll on MTV when he was writing about games for MTV, the Kotaku stuff when they first started up, Destructoid, all these places where folk were writing about games. And I was playing games at the same time. I'd beaten and loved Resident Evil 4, so I was stoked to see Resident Evil 5 until the trailer came out. So the trailer comes out, you know this, and your audience probably will as well. But it showed this really buff white guy, think Chris Hemsworth type dude, right? Walking into a village full of random black people, just minding their own business. And next thing you know, they show a scene where somebody's in the back room getting either strung out or turned out. You can't really tell what. And then all the black people start attacking this guy for no apparent reason, just because he exists. And he mows them down with semi-automatic weapons. At the time, they didn't show the co-op partner who ended up being a black woman, right? There was just this white guy in a village with a semi-automatic weapon killing angry black folk in their village, right? And that really struck a chord with me because I've been gaming a long time. I don't know if you're like me, but I've been trying to recreate myself in gaming spaces ever since we found out we could do avatars with back cornrows or reskinned grayish textures on top of whatever the white model was. Right. And so to see a game that's supposedly set in Africa, but features these colonialist, imperialist, genocidal traits that are common to video games, it was really kind of a right. So that was my villain origin story. I wanted to write about the game. And I had at the time a really novel method of trying to understand how to interrogate what digital technology was doing and the audiences themselves. Right, and this is also the origin story of CTDA, critical technocultural discourse analysis as well. Right, and so from that perspective, I felt I was able to talk about how the interface structured the ways in which you could interact between whiteness and blackness in the game, but also between men and women. If you recall, Shiva was basically a pack mule. Right.
Yes.
And also the ways that gamers responded to this. So white gamers were like, I don't see the problem. Didn't voodoo originate in Africa? Why is it a problem that there are zombies who are not African? Isn't that what it originally was? And black folk earnestly trying to explain to them that this is not what voodoo is. Right. Right. And so capturing that controversy, I was following along a path set by folk like David Leonard and a couple of other folk who have written really fantastic stuff on race online, including my mentor, Lisa Nakamura, right, who talks about when you introduce a representation of a non-white body in a gaming space, you get something that goes beyond simply, I'm able to interact with this digital technology, and you overlay cultural and gender and sexual influences on top of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing.
Thanks.
Just like that, just like your origin of like in the advocacy of just like pointing out those, just starting with that itself, or just I'm sorry, I'm just rambling on. Okay. But look, it's like one is the origin of the internet, like the uprising of the internet. You were at an age to where you can really like articulate and like really process how the internet really boomed, like the internet boom, and honestly the second internet boom, which was like the early 2000s. You know, that was really like the second internet really big boom after AOL got distributed to all the houses. People were using the free trials and whatnot, you know, and all that. But like also paying attention to the landscape of digital media and the digital communities that were being developed. And so it's always interesting to hear like you pushing back on something that clearly is racist and people gaslighting you like, come on, it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. And it's really like, and in all honesty, it's like, well, if they did this to you, how would you feel? You know, if it was your family. But some people can't put themselves in those shoes. But how do you see like your like methodology right now being like utilized in like today's world where everything is so like we went from a point to where the internet was like a luxury to the internet being a necessity and a way of like it's intertwining everything that we do now. So how do you feel like people are missing, like, I mean, I know there's a lot of ways, but like how do you feel like a lot of people are missing that like ability to understand the landscape for Black and brown folks in the digital space now?
So part of what we're seeing these days is that, and I wrote this literally 12 years ago, but it's even more true now, that the internet is an infrastructure. The digital is an infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean you really don't notice it, even though you use it every day, until something breaks.
Yes.
Right. And so I when I give talks, I mention, curb cuts at crosswalks, which were implemented by the American Disabilities Act in the mid 70s. And they thought they were doing it for disabled folk, but what they found is that everybody uses them. Right. It's an easier way to get from the transition from sidewalk to street back to sidewalk. So people with strollers, elderly folk, kids, all of them love curb cuts and demand them everywhere they go. Right. And the internet is the same way. Our internet is very different in 2023 than even what mine was in 2009 when I had 56K dial-up because my building didn't get DSL. Right. But that seamlessness that people experience now leads people to think that the internet is somehow beyond critique until it's something personal. And what I think I've been able to do, since a lot of people have taken up CTDA since I introduced it, is introduce the idea that we should interrogate the technology as well as what the technology is telling us we're doing, and then try to understand that through how we bring ourselves to that technology. And that sounds complicated. So let me just say it like this. I always, when I give a talk, I ask people who's an Android phone user and who's an Apple phone user. And the answers are a little different today because Apple has really achieved damn near market supremacy, but there's still a few Android users out there. And then after I get people to raise their hands and tell me what they use, I ask the Android users to tell me what Apple users are like. Right. And everybody just starts laughing before I even say anything else, because we have certain opinions about what type of people use Apple devices, that they're sheep, that they're consumers, that they don't really understand technology, right, that they're not expert users. And I argue in this this Resident Evil article, but across all my work, that belief is as much how we understand technology as any argument over graphical processing units, GPUs, over the resolution on your screen, whether or not you have 5.1 surround sound. The type of people that use those things, the PC master race, for example, which is not aged well as a phrase, right? But exactly that, right? And so CTDA has really been helpful for people who have taken it up. And you see some really excellent, sophisticated analyses that don't rely on what the mainstream says a gamer is or a gamer does. So I just talked with a young scholar who's doing queer gamers of color, which is very much reminiscent of Kishana Gray's work, right? But using a CTDA perspective to say, well, how does Stardew Village in particular resonate with queer gamers of color? Or The Sims? She also has that part as part of her case study, right? And that's a very different understanding than saying, oh, well, console gamers are X or PC gamers are Y, right? It's a much more detailed understanding of how people understand themselves through the technology they use.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's deeper. I think that's something that as Black and brown folks in general, we have to seek out our place within those digital spaces, or seek out those games or just those experiences that affirm who we are.
Yes.
And while the gaming industry itself is still and technology itself is still being marketed and targeted towards the white consumer to a certain extent. And when we have to do that, we do develop a deeper culture. It does intertwine with our personal culture and our personal experiences. I think the most beautiful thing about that I've seen more recently was the Grand Theft Auto servers, with the ones with all those little spaces where all these Black communities are able to experience this world. It's kind of like Second Life 2.0, it's that experience that people are getting, and it's amazing to see that, because it's like what we always do. Well, whatever you give us, we're gonna make a way to make it our own, and it's that shows that resiliency from the Black community that's been instilled in us, unfortunately, since our ancestors were enslaved. But that just goes to show that our innovation and our ability to create and evolve on top of things that are already established is astronomical.
Bro, you don't even need me. You said it better than I could say it. You said it much better than I could say it. So yeah, that's exactly right.
No, oh man, I still need you. You got a lot more experience than me. that's just the first time I actually had a stream of consciousness actually flow together well. Usually it's like broken into
you on season 3,
pieces.
fam. You got to sell that to somebody else. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Right? But think about it in this way too. Like, one of the things that goes along with your question about what a CTDA brought to Brung, you can tell I'm from the South. What a CTDA brought to understanding not only gaming but digital technologies is it's really harder. I find that it's harder to talk about race now than it was a decade ago because of the rise of multiplayer gaming and MOBAs and MMORPGs, right? Battle royales in particular, right? Because most of them feature a cast of multicultural characters without ever going into why that culture makes this particular character of note, right? And so I find that unless you get a chance to talk about single player adventures, right, which now are starting to come back, but for a while, everybody wanted to be a multiplayer gaming as a service thing. And it was really frustrating to talk about blackness in that space because the gamer gators, God rest their soul, would come back and say, well, it's obvious race doesn't matter anymore because you have brown, queer, other types of representation in this game. So there's no point in talking about it. I'm like, no, there's still a point in talking about it. It's just that the industry doesn't want us to be as critical of it as it once was. So they've taken some steps to address it, right? But I'm playing Forspoken right now.
Okay.
And Kushana and I were talking about this weekend because we were at a conference together, and she thinks the main character in Forspoken is black. I think the main character in Forspoken is South Asian. Many of those folk are highly melanated, right? They have brown skin, they have fuller lips, they even have coarser hair, but they're not black folk. Right. Yeah. And so people have been saying, oh, well, I don't appreciate this black character in this game being so profane, being so uncultured, being so urban. And I'm thinking, I can understand why a South Asian character would take on the characteristics of black folk in order to orient themselves in our urban space. Does that make sense? It's a difference. Like, you could think about Aquafina, who's probably never actually met a black person, but uses a black scent in her social media life before she became a superstar. And think how good her black scent was, or not good.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
It was impeccable. It was impeccable. It was like very hard New York.
Yes.
As like somebody that isn't from New York and heard somebody talk like they were from New York, I was like, oh, they sound really New York, you know. But and then it comes out once she start getting the bag, she's put on her corporate voice.
Right. All of a sudden, she's back to the Asian second generation immigrant. Right. Things don't change. Right. And so I think CTDA is helpful in unpacking some of that stuff. Right. Above and beyond simply representation to how that representation is built in the game. So like one of my favorite games still is Miles Morales. And I suck at Spider-Man. I've not completed either one, but I played both of them. But that opening cinematic with Miles on the train in New York, and you say you're not a New Yorker, but this might make sense to you. Miles is on the train with a crispy fade, with clean Timbs and jeans, with a parka on and his headphones on. That is that's urban blackness, right? And that's something that up until that point, you very rarely saw as a main character, right? So like I recently found out that Respawn, who's doing the Star Wars Jedi Survivor, originally wanted to make the main character a black character, right? And how would that have made a difference as opposed to a ginger, which he is now, right? And the kid who does him is good. But if it was a black Jedi, bruh, that would have been fantastic. Like making a blacker Star Wars universe, like I can't even imagine how dope that would have been.
Yeah, and it's still, I still think it would have sold gangbusters too. Like it would have sold so many.
I do too.
Because it's still Star Wars, you know,
right?
Yeah, and it's still that world and that universe, and so like that alone provides that fantasy or that fantasy idea of this person being alone. And the one thing that would have made the folks mad is that the story is canon. So like that would have. And it would have pissed everybody off. They're like, "Oh, why is this canon?" Da da da. They keep doing this woke shit, and it's like, God, come on, like, it's fake. It's Space Wizards.
I completely agree. It would have been amazing. Yeah, I'll stop there. So, you have more questions?
Oh yeah, no, that was great. I really appreciate that. One thing I wanted to say was that like I see a lot of like your methodology being utilized by a lot of YouTubers and a lot of YouTubers who are analyzing like the intercourse of, I mean, not the intercourse, the integration of technology and culture.
Yes. Fuck around and find out exactly.
And like how they really highlight like the black perspective and blackness in media. There's this one YouTuber, I don't want to. Her name is Khadijah something. I don't want to slaughter her name. But I follow her. And she has
When you find the link,
a
make
last
sure you
name I
send
can't
it to me.
pronounce. Yes, I will. But she does it a lot. Like she really really looks at like how like the media and like everything like is like, especially, and social media itself too is like integrated in how it interacts with Black culture and Blackness. And like, you know, like for example, she did one on Bridgerton and like brown skin, like colorism, you know, like it was doing it on that. It was doing it on like she did like talking about blackface and community and a
that's
bunch of other things,
beautiful.
you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, she's dope. Yeah, make sure I definitely have to send you a link. But yeah, it's really seeing that and like really diving deep into those videos.
Okay.
But speaking of gaming, like just to circle back to that, what are besides Forspoken, what are some other games that you've been playing recently, or and also what is a game that you played recently that you really like applauded like the Black representation of too?
Ooh, that last question is harder.
Yeah.
I'm playing Dad of War 2.
Okay.
Which, you know, features the Kratos is voiced by a Black actor, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm writing about it to talk about how it recovers Black masculinity and fatherhood. And so that's been interesting to me. I finished and loved the first one, in part because I've been playing Kratos since he came out, right? Because Kratos was originally Black in the very first game. But because he's covered in ashes, most people don't pay attention to the voice actor. They just think of him as a Greek person, and they think of Greeks as automatically white. And I'm like, well, the Greeks ain't as white as you thought they were, right? Let's see, what else am I playing? Playing Jedi Survivor. I finished Jedi Outcast right before I started this one. What game have I really loved? That's a really good question. I gotta think. I have not finished it, but the blackest game I played recently is Deathloop by Arcane, right? Because both the main character and his daughter are Black and very Black, right? It's not like someone trying to pull off a black accent like the South African woman who played Nadine in Lost Legacy, right?
Yeah.
And so Cole is Black and his daughter is Black, and I really love that part even more than I love the game itself. Those games tend to give me anxiety because I'm like, am I making a wrong decision? Will this fuck up the narrative? And so I haven't finished it yet, but I'm working on it. Definitely. What else have I finished recently? Mostly, I'm largely a single player gamer. I've beaten the Ascent a couple of times. Which I love because I love cyberpunk shit. I finished.
Oh my God! Hold on, let's talk about. Man, I feel like nobody else has played that game. That game is so amazing.
I bought it on 2 platforms already. So no, it's a fantastic game. The world building is fantastic. Sometimes I get mad at the map, but I played and beaten it twice. I like it better than Cyberpunk 2077. In part because it's a more immersive world than Cyberpunk is. Right, and the mechanics, the shooting and stuff has more impact than the floaty stuff in 2077. What else have I played? I've played and beat. Well, you can't beat Hades, but I've gotten to the after on Hades. I love a game also called Dead Cells, which I have 2 boss cells in. You're seeing a trend here, right?
Yes.
So I love roguelikes. I'm still waiting for a good Black one. I love single player games. I just bought both Callisto Protocol and the Dead Space remake because I love those 2 games. And so, I'm just kind of going through the rotations right now. Whatever holds my attention, and I don't have to remember what the control scheme is. That's what I'm playing the most right now.
Okay, that's great. If you want, I would really want to recommend a one to you. I don't know if you played Mafia 3
I have.
in 2016.
I love Mafia 3. Kishana and I were competing to who would write about it first, and she won. I'm from Louisiana, and so and I was born in '68, so it has a lot of resonance to me in terms of what that era of Louisiana was like, and the fact and I talk about this when I gave my talk too. The fact that if you walk into a store in a white neighborhood they'll say, "Boy, what you doing back here?" Like I was like,
Yeah.
and it completely contrasts with the kleptomania that is the habit of most role playing games, where you can like
Yeah.
some of them will say, "Oh, you've gotten caught stealing, you should run," right? But that's very different from saying, "Nigga, what is you doing back here?" Right?
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that reality. But also, they have black women, older black women who are just coming out of church talking about, "Baby, did you see Martin Luther King's speech the other day? He's so articulate. That boy good." Like, I love that
Yeah.
stuff. I love it. And so,
Yeah.
no, Mafia 3
Yeah.
is great. And I think it's also underappreciated.
Yeah, it is. I'm personally working on like doing like a very extensive like series on
Oh,
it. Just
keep me
talk about
posted,
like
man.
yes, because I love that game and like just about me. I went to Dillard down in New
Okay.
Orleans.
So, you know.
And so
Yes.
yeah, so I know. So like being down there and being there, I'm originally from Michigan, but I lived down there for 4 years and I was like doing a lot of community stuff.
Okay.
So like I talked to a lot of people and you just feel it.
Yes.
And like playing that game, you're like, damn, they did it.
It,
And I'm still confused at how these people did that good of a
right.
job.
Because
Like
they are
what the
literally
hell?
from Poland, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Mafia 1 and 2 are Boston/East Coast urban. So for them to be able to
Yeah.
translate that down to the South and capture the attitude of the time and the interaction
Yeah.
is fucking fantastic. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it was beyond me, and I'm really playing through it. I did have to install a mod because like it is a little bloated. I ain't gonna lie, it's bloated. But this mod lets you do like when you got to kill like the underbosses, you only have to do one of those missions, and then it moves you forward
Yes.
instead of doing like the 4 or the
Yes.
5. So that really moves the pace along really well. And that actually helps out. So yeah, but yeah, that's one of my favorites. Like of just like capturing and encapsulating like a certain era and a certain time period,
Absolutely.
especially for black folks.
Especially for black
'Cause-
folks.
Yeah. Cool, man. So we're getting close to the end of the episode.
Already?
And yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. But this is the time I let the guests get off some positive vibes, words of affirmation to the listeners. So I'm gonna take a step back and let you step up and yeah, just give off some good words of wisdom or some words of affirmation you like to give yourself, anything that helps you keep you going and keep you pushing.
So let me give a shout out to somebody who I follow, and we've been promising to collaborate forever. And this is the young lady, A.M. Dark, Darke. And I love what she's doing, where she's creating a library for game developers and 3D visual designers of black hair textures, right? Because one of the things I've been frustrated with for the longest time, I used to have locks, right? Now I have an afro that's unevenly shaped, and it's hard to find those type of hairstyles in any game. Like no matter how well Unreal Engine promises to make faces, they still don't get the hair right. So shout out to this young lady, this young they, right, for having the wherewithal to build this library of hair textures and patterns and the like, so that I can finally see my hair type represented. It's not the bad cornrow wig from a Tyler Perry movie. It's not the same dreadlocks up in a bun, right? It's actual differentially textured hair on the same thing. I love that her work is doing that. For those of us who are out there, like you will always be able to find options to make purple people or aliens with space ears, but keep doing you, right? Keep looking for ways to represent yourself in the games that you love, and keep asking for those type of representations in the games that you buy, right? Because that's the only way that we'll get game developers to recognize that we also play these games. Just like women were able to fight. I remember when the Battlefield designers were like, we can't create female Marines because boobs are hard. I'm like, have you seen Dead or Alive beach volleyball? They've got boobs down to a science, right? So obviously, blackness shouldn't be as hard as making realistic boob textures, or to the developers in Red Dead 2, where they were like, we spent hours making sure that the horse's balls moved appropriately because you were behind them all day. And I'm like, but you can't make a black hairstyle to save your life. Like, tell me what's going on. So keep asking the developers, keep using your dollars to get the developers to invest in us so that we can continue to see us in these spaces. How's that?
That was amazing. Also, I just want to, you just reminded me, hey, fuck that developer from Square Enix that said black people wasn't around in the medieval times. It took me 5 minutes of Googling, and I found that black people were actually from Africa, were in England and all the UK and all the colonial little fucking areas.
Oh, yeah.
They did their own traveling too.
Yes.
And I can't believe he said that. So that's shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame on you, you piece of shit. But anyway, hey, Andre, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, where can the people find you on the socials, and what can they expect when they either read some of your amazing works or scroll down your Twitter feed or any other social media stuff?
Those are two very different experiences. So, if you read my book, it's as black as I can make it, but bring your dictionary because I love to use big words. I'm a nerd. And if you, I'm only really on one platform these days. It's Twitter, oddly, and I go there under Doc Dre, DOCDRA. But my username is Thought Leader, and you'll find out when you find it, right? But I call myself an academic shit poster. I'm as liable to talk smart about the digital as I am to post fine young black men and women and puppies and babies. Like I believe in being honest to who I am as a person. And so, yeah, welcome to my world.
Yeah, awesome. Yes. And if you want to find us on social media, you can find us at UBG Pod. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I don't really post on TikTok or Instagram, but you can find us there and on Twitch. We're going to do a lot of Twitch streaming, and there's going to be a lot of shit talking. And thank y'all so much for listening to this episode. And as always, be happy, drink some water, and keep gaming.